Welcome to today's episode for people interested in the extraordinary, yet ancient and often long forgotten stuff. This is your host, Joseph Schinwald from onbythebeach.com. Our guest today is Courtni StarHeart Hale. Hello, Courtni.
Hi, greetings. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you. The topic today is shamanism, the medicine wheel. The circle is a symbol of wisdom, tradition. It would be part one if we talk a long time. If we get really into the spirit, we will have a part two, which is Ayahuasca retreats, getting to know the after-death scenario and the spirit world before it will happen to you. So let's talk about Courtni and her biography. She's a traditional, authentic shaman, 15 years training, including Native American medicine teachers, herbalists, and holistic health, personal consulting, monthly Kambo medicine retreats, soul retrieval readings. She's executive director at the Center for Natural and Traditional Knowledge. Leader, organizing speaking events include World Economic Forum, 4 Steps into the Vortex, Biology of Personal Power, EcoVillage event, including Pete Seeger and Carole Hart. Church of the Natural Law and Theogenic Church, Plant Medicine Community, Microdosing, Sustainable and Holistic Living, Retreats and Ceremony, Shamanic Training. She's highly educated. She has a doctorate. She studied on a doctorate program, University of Delaware, American University, School of International Service, with 2 bachelors, one in Latin American Studies and the other in international relations. Very prepared for becoming a shaman. So let's talk about the first question. What was your training like as a shaman?
It depends on where you consider the beginning. I think I was always asking questions that other people weren't asking, even when I was younger. And the first book I ever bought was the Tibetan Book of the Dead. So I was always interested in magical, supernatural, spiritual stuff. So I guess it started like that. When my official training started, I had already been doing martial arts and yoga for years, and farming. Always been interested in herbalism and plants. My father was a horticulturist, so I kind of grew up in a greenhouse. But the Native American piece of it was like something out of a Castaneda novel. I'm sure you've read all those books, right?
Yes, I did. Also, I read the Tibetan Book of the Dead. Actually, I listened to it when I was driving the car, which is really weird. I listened to it two or 3 times while I was driving the car at night.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, so my main teacher was Patricio Dominguez, and he's a traditional Pueblo Tiwa shaman. I think everyone seems to know him from that movie Spirit Molecule, DMT. He is the Native American elder with the dark hair pulled back in a knot, which is typical, a traditional way of doing your hair. So he was born on the reservation down south of here in the Mesilla Valley by Las Cruces, which is not too far away from where they actually tested the bomb. So
we're talking about New Mexico.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Very close to Mexico, actually. His people came from Taos Pueblo. A long time ago, we had a revolt here, and someone named Pope actually led the other people in a revolt, which was effective. So they pushed the Spanish out all the way back to Mexico City. And when they did come back, then there was a mixture of culture and a balance. So a lot of us speak Spanish and English, and some are fortunate enough to speak a tribal language as well. But he's got an uninterrupted lineage. And that's something that's really hard to find nowadays.
That is very interesting to me, because the whole thing about lineage, the lineage of shamans, thousands of years going back, and you are connected with the shamans throughout Southern, Central, and North America. You know them. because, before I met you some time ago on a group, Facebook group by a dear friend, Rocky Buckley, I had in the bucket list in my, there was one thing in there. Even though I was in India for a long time and I was traveling in South America for a year, but I never really tried this medicinal plants. I mean, I was smoking dope. I was smoking hashish in India, of course, and I actually had to stop it because, it really interfered in my business. I had a bazaar on the beach in Goa, for 2 years, and I would lose money because I was always so stoned. So then and I couldn't find it anymore when I hid it somewhere, so that got me off it a little bit. But now I'm in Austria, everything is illegal. Anyway, the point is that I had this on my bucket list. And so when you popped up, I said, wow, I have to get to know Courtni because maybe she's the one I should connect with, because I don't want to really go into South America, even though I speak Spanish fluently, because I was over 20 years in South America myself, in Argentina and Central America, running a newspaper, Hemisphere newspaper, and teaching at universities. But I said, how do I do this, wanting this experience? I mean, I don't want to go into the Brazilian jungle and with some gringos who want some tripping stuff going on. I'm not that kind of person, I don't want to trip. I want to have a real experience like yoga, meditation, like something not superficial. And then, some guide says, we know a shaman somewhere in the jungle in Brazil, and in the rainforest, you can end up in all kinds of weird scenarios. I know it because I was traveling a lot in my life. And so I wanted something more secure, more safe, and something more educated. And that's why we connected.
That's amazing. I would love to hear more sometime about your experience in South America. I lived in Chile for a year, and I went from the top to the bottom. And then at these elders councils, I had the opportunity to meet medicine people from all over Latin America and Central America. And at the time I was in training, I was carrying bags for my elder, going to these international councils and learning, really. And it's an amazing thing. I studied cross-cultural communications in DC, and that was the thing that was like the most fascinating to me about culture and about, the old cultures, because I always thought there's something wrong with our world. We've really missed a step in here somewhere, and somewhere in time, they must have known how to live better than we live now. So, sitting at these councils, it's just amazing. Every color, every pattern, every symbol has meaning, and I thought, well, we can't really go backwards. We have to go forwards. And, our culture, it should be a living thing. So how do we take that knowledge and mesh it into something that a modern person, even in a city, could understand and access? So it's just interesting that you said that, because it's like there must be a lot of people who feel the way you do, who are spiritual people, who would like to have, an entheogenic experience that's authentic, but without being in the jungle, maybe.
Well, going by car at night and listening 3 times to at least 3 times to the Book of the Dead, Tibetan Book of the Dead. I mean, I just want to basically experience that whole experience of after death, whatever it is. I don't know. I don't want to have any speculations either, and I don't believe in hell or heaven, because I believe there is a middling world. It's always the middle. But I would like to experience before I actually go there. And so I learned that Ayahuasca is actually permitting people who are spiritually disciplined and have some kind of, a training in yoga and meditation, this kind of experience. Courtni, I really would like to talk about your spiritual experience, which is one of a kind, because, when I studied the world religions for a master's degree, and I read the book by Houston Smith, and it's called The World's Religions. Beautiful book. I read it. I still read it. It's such a comprehensive and artistic, compassionate book about all religions, like seeing them like a variety of like different flowers, And so when I read it, it was like very clear to me that shamanic experiences are way different from normal spiritual experiences. I mean, my spiritual experiences are not normal either. Reference one has, if you're a Christian, a Jew, a Hindu, you have the same spiritual experience, but you will explain it to yourself differently. You will have a different interpretation of it. So that's the only difference, that we make different interpretations of it. But a shamanic experience is definitely a unique one. And I have read recently this article of yours, which is medium.com. And if I may, I just want to grab some of those paragraphs, maybe just one or two. And you became really sick. You said in there, that's typical the journey of a shaman. You looked for help to meet a medicine man. Joseph Campbell speaks about the hero's journey, the hero with 1,000 faces. It's much deeper. This kind of thing is deeper. And it's different. That's why shamans, they have suffered more than anybody else, experienced more than anybody else. That's why they are shamans. And you say at the end of this healing, of spending so much time traveling back and forth to the spirit world, both while dying and while coming back to life, I have an unusual perspective. Nothing is quite like we have been told about spirituality or the texts we read that deal with religion. Few are even close to that I have seen and heard from others. Reincarnation, karma, interconnected multiverses of consciousness and light, it's vast and deep and wide and beautiful. So I think this is a fantastic paragraph, I mean, because, when you talk about this, what came to mind to me, how should I say, I'm not stinking of any religion. I just love the wisdom, to get from them. But when I read this paragraph, something came to mind. The World's Religions from Houston Smith about Hinduism, it says a multiple world that includes innumerable galaxies horizontally, innumerable tiers vertically, and innumerable cycles temporally. And, when I think about your experience, and in Buddhism, it's very similar also. It's like there is this world within worlds, and everything is like mutually interpenetrating and interdependent, co-originating interdependently. And even, if you think at the smallest thing, it's a world, it's a cosmos. If it's big or small, it's interrelated. If you could tell me a little bit more about that experience, that would be so interesting to me. That experience you had when you got sick, when you recovered, how you recovered, and then the new view you had because you became a shaman. And you were called by a shaman, the urban shaman. So that's not your title, You didn't give it to yourself,
No, we don't name ourselves. There's this strangeness about Native American culture. It's very, very different than mainstream American culture. It's a little bit more like Shinto in a way, and the more Japanese mindset of we work together, and the nail that stands up gets hammered down. So we don't go about asking for recognition, and the elders do it in their time, in their way. And it's a mystical thing. I mean, urban shaman doesn't sound very mystical. That was kind of my elder busting my chops a little bit because I'm half Native and I'm half European. So it's they call me a bridge person. But he jokes around a little bit because I'm not a reservation Indian or Native person. I'm a city person. So he said, first he said, Courtni, I found this woman in London. She calls herself the stiletto shaman. Maybe you should go for something like that. I said, I'm not being the stiletto shaman. He goes, I've got it. The urban shaman, So that's another thing about shamanism is like a little bit of chest thumping. You know how boxers are? It kind of feels like Muhammad Ali or something like, we like to beat our chests a bit, especially the men, of course.
I understand that.
So, that experience, I was in New York and I had just had my son, who's now almost 17. And we were in a house along the river, not too far from the city, but like in the country. And it was a 200-year-old house that had been hand built. I guess the well had been hand dug as well and had gotten tainted. But I didn't know what was going on. I kept losing more and more weight and having all kinds of strange infections. I mean, and how fortunate that I'm an herbalist, right? So I was able to cure my own infections over and over again for years. tooth infections, eye infections, ear infections, brain infection, urinary tract, everything. By the time I got down to like 90 pounds and I looked like a Holocaust survivor, I realized that I probably wasn't going to be able to cure myself. And it just started getting worse and worse. And none of the doctors knew what was going on. So, I mean, I think there was that will to live, especially because I was a mom, and I love my children so much. They're so amazing. And it's like,
they look lovely. I saw their pictures on Facebook. Teenagers, lovely children, beautiful eyes, and they do retreats with you. That's and they are so grateful for it. That's beautiful.
Yeah, my son is my firekeeper. I'm so proud of him. I mean, he may or may not decide to become a medicine man, but just the honor of having my son, tend to the sacred fire is just amazing. And I feel supported by that, my family, the part that was native, our culture was interrupted by the conquest and by this convergence of, the Spanish and the Pueblo. So it's an interesting thing. I love Spain and I love Spanish and I love that culture. And I love my native culture as well. So I see it as kind of a good thing that we've woven together. But obviously, we lost a lot during the conquest. It was unfortunate.
Yeah, there's a history behind it. I read some books and, they could have built the bridge of gold from that conquest from South America to Spain, right? And they only wasted it in wars. Now they are still an agricultural society in many ways. They didn't go through the Industrial Revolution. Anyway, I don't want to, this is your story now because
No, that's fascinating. There are so many like little caveats because you and I have so much in common with our interest in education,
Yes, thank you. Yes, true.
So let me see. So I finally got sick enough that I was going back and forth to the spirit world. Essentially I was dying, but very, very slowly over 3-4 years. And so I kept on having these dreams of an EcoVillage. And this EcoVillage, the distinguishing quality was their hearts. I could feel how beautiful their hearts were and how happy and full of light and kind. And they kept on calling me their shaman. And I was like, what? Like, what are you talking about? But as I was dying, I'm going to the spirit world and I find my teacher, Patricio was there. My daughter hadn't been born yet. And she was my tour guide. So she eventually did get born, as you see, and she's a really marvelous person. At any rate, I found him because she gave me his name and number in the spirit world.
Wow, that's like it sounds like really, it sounds like that moment it's really everything, future and present is all there here.
Yeah, you get into that timeless place. When you're in the spirit world, and nothing is as they write about it in the books. I mean, I do think that the Tibetans and the Hindus have a pretty good lock on a lot of it from the things that I've seen. So I appreciate that, but it's indescribable and it's a direct experience. You can't read about it. It's experiential,
Yes, but Courtni also, and we continue with the journey because it's this is really what really interests me super because the shamanic experience, right? But Joseph Campbell talks about it. That all of this wisdom tradition we have, and we don't say wisdom traditions. It's like one world wisdom tradition from all of those religions, but it all really comes from shamanism. I mean, in the beginning, there was shamans, and those shamans, they also used plant medicine. I mean, in India, they had soma, the drink of soma, and they put in marijuana, cannabis, they put in magic mushrooms. I don't know how they mixed it, but these were the first shamans. And before priests even existed, because before the word priest was even there, because there were no cities. And then that kind of wisdom came into the cities, and then through the priests, and there are very good priests, of course, all over the world, but through the priests, through the governments, this was then manipulated. So that's Joseph Campbell's point of view on this topic.
I mean, I also really enjoy Joseph Campbell, and that was almost about as close as I got to understanding shamanism, because like I said, my native roots had really been cut off. So at any rate, I end up, it's that red pill, blue pill moment when you're like, oh man, if I really believe that I'm talking to my unborn daughter in the spirit world, and she's led me to this medicine man, then there's really no turning back. You know what I'm saying? Once you
Mm-hmm.
truly believe that that's possible, you can't ever see life the same way again. And there's that kind of, queasy feeling in your stomach, like, oh my gosh, what if it's true? What if he really exists? And what if all this is really happening, huh? Well, I woke up from that one dream where she was trying to give me his name and his contact. And she said, Mom, you got to paint this painting and you've got to take it to the shaman. And I'm like, I need a little bit more help than that, sweetie. And so I wake up and there's a book on my nightstand that wasn't there before. I had flown to Rochester for whatever business trip, and I hadn't unpacked my suitcase. I had just laid down with my son for a nap because he was a baby. And there on the nightstand was a book that I didn't have, and it wasn't mine, and it wasn't there before. Needless to say, it was one of those moments. Like, if I open this book and I see this guy's face, my old life is over. Like, am I ready to take that leap? Wouldn't you know it, I open up the book and there's Patricio Dominguez's face. And it's this really striking picture of him with a drum, like looking very, very shamany and almost a little creepy in like that powerful way, because his eyes have this certain quality. And I thought, oh boy, well, what do you know? I call him. And I worked I worked for publications enough so that I could say I have credentials as a journalist, and I'm really interviewing you. I called him and he granted me an interview. Well, the kids, my kid's father said, oh, it's too much. We don't have the money, and you can't go to New Mexico. That's crazy. And he's a really cool guy, so at least he entertained it. And then I got bumped from my flight, and I had a free round trip ticket all of a sudden to anywhere in the U.S. Back in those days, if you got bumped, you got a ticket. And so the next Monday, I was on a plane to Albuquerque.
That's a nice word, Albuquerque. I couldn't pronounce it if I see it in written form. But I know that's a very important place. That's where you live, correct?
No. I do, yeah.
Yeah.
Back in the day, it was like the UN of the Southwest. Out here, there was an interconnected group of I don't know. I want to say cities. I don't want to say empires, but, all the way from here down into Mesoamerica, it was called Aztlan. And so we're essentially the northwest corner, the connective part between the Plains Indians, the Pacific Coast Indians, and the East. So It was a really important crossroads.
Fantastic. Do you like to say anything else about your journey before you became a shaman? Otherwise, we move on to the medicine wheel and the circle in general, and all that it contains in wisdom tradition. I don't know much about the medicine wheel, but if you want to add something about the journey, I would like to give you the time.
I think there's so much more to say and nothing to say at the same time. I mean, I was healed, by going to a Sundance and had a really, really powerful sweat lodge experience. At the same time, my Kung Fu master had this breakthrough. He went and doused at my house and found that the well was contaminated. And so at the very same time as I was getting this powerful healing at Sundance, the tree, he's connected, right? And he plugs in and he says, I got to go out to your house. I think I know what's wrong. Even between the two of us, we weren't able to fix what was going on with me. So at that same moment, I was able to start getting better and better. It took years of peyote lodges, sweat lodges, yoga, holistic healing. It was probably 4 or 5 years before I was really back on my feet.
But then the world was not the same anymore.
Yeah, right. No, it wasn't. I wasn't able to function the same way in terms of, oh, hey, let's go off to our 9 to 5 or, be a normal person. Because once you understand how beautiful and how brief and how powerful life is, you don't want to waste a single second.
So what do you think, what healed you?
What healed me? I think the Force healed me. That mystery being, that force of life, wanted me to live, and it sent me back with a message, and it sent me back wanting to train and wanting me to bridge across this knowledge that was, really so close to being lost. I think none of my teachers, other students, are really carrying on the tradition the way I do. So it would have been lost.
And the tradition is connected very much with the lineage.
It is. When you have these initiations, it's like Shaktipat, right? And they put the touch on you. And
yes.
I think, what are you touching my forehead for? And then the classic experience, the flashing lights, the kind of a portal opening up. There's no explaining that. I think Joseph Chilton Pearce talks about Muktananda doing that. And I found that really, really fascinating. Anyway, I ended up having a pipe tradition, a sweat lodge tradition, a medicine tradition, ghost dance tradition. So I'm authorized to also do a modern version of ghost dance that we call either dream dance or spirit dance. So I carry 4 or 5 different really powerful lineages, and I'm just really blessed.
And they're going back thousands of years.
Oh yeah, sure, time immemorial. The pipe that I carry came from Hart's tradition, and he was the last Muskogee Creek medicine man. And those people go back thousands and thousands of years. Then you look at the Pueblos, and gosh, they've been here since the beginning of time. They say that they came up from a hole in the earth not too far away from here. And there's a story of how they came from the other world when there was a shift, right? And the waters started rising in the earth world under the crust where they lived. And it pushed them up, and they came through a hole in the ground on the backs of some ginormous ants.
That's amazing. I always thought that I'm come out of this world like the apples come from a tree. But I might also be not from this world. So this is this duality. I don't know quite. I cannot really decide how I came into this world, or how I grew out of this world. I don't know quite.
It can be many things at once. That's another thing that's different about shamanism. It's this and also. It's not either or. It's this and also. Many, many things.
Yes. It was not like overnight. You had to get some, like the 3rd, 4th dan of karate, of kung fu. Not before you could teach.
Yeah. It was a long training process, and my teacher was very reluctant to authorize me to do anything because he always considered me white, which I don't know why that's like a personal insult or some kind of offense about what color my skin is. I don't find it relevant, because I've seen medicine people from all around the world. You have your medicine people from Africa, from Asia, from South America, from India. They're everywhere, so.
There are always some orthodox people. I mean, a little bit orthodoxy, right? In every group, That's
true. And probably there's a sense of being protective of the lineage. It's like handing your baby over to someone. You're not going to hand that to just anyone. Actually, he considers the lineage more precious than his own children. And the relationship between teacher and student is a bond that goes beyond even that of like mother and daughter or father and son. So I can see why it took a long time. And I had a lot of healing to do, before you can really accompany someone else in their healing journey. You have to be fairly well along in your own.
Well, that's what I admire and respect so much in your work, because, I personally, I'm a fearless person, but when it comes to like taking something like ayahuasca, I'm kind of scared. I wouldn't like to do it alone. And then I have somebody like you guiding me, being there for me, and helping me interpret the whole thing, and helping me how to deal with my transformation afterwards. But you're doing this with others and for others. So that's where it comes in, when you have been experienced this many times yourself, and then you just know how to help other people. That's beautiful.
Everyone's healing journey is so unique, and yet there are a lot of similarities, So I can see when someone is, processing things that they learned while they were on their journey into the spirit world. I can say, oh yeah, I've seen something similar like that or experienced it. So then, like you said, it's comforting, to have someone that you can talk to who can be a guide. And also, the reason why we started working with ayahuasca, because my elder hadn't really wanted to bring it up, that he had an ayahuasca lineage, because he thought it was one of those I don't know, one of those kind of trite things that the gringos are doing now, going down to South America and all that. He didn't want to have any part of it. So, but he had an ayahuasca lineage and had worked with it himself for years with a Taita from Colombia. And the Taitas are amazing beings. You know, they're like the dons of the jungle. They're the guys with these huge feather caps. And one Taita might have jurisdiction over 20 or 100 villages. So they're beyond ayahuasquero. They're at that next level of helping the ayahuasqueros who help the people in the village. So, you know, it starts coming up more and more because people are going to South America. And even if you do speak Spanish, like a lot of these Taitas don't necessarily speak Spanish. You know, they speak their tribal language. And even if you spoke perfect Spanish with these people, their cosmology is like so vastly different than ours that it's hard to communicate, you know? Wow. So after these years of studying and studying cross-cultural communications and all these readings on spiritual practice from around the world, I started to be able to pull out like certain points and go, oh, this means this. Oh, and that means that. And so then we come into the medicine wheel and the tree of life and all of that. At any rate, people were coming back shattered from South America, and they might have gone to the center of the universe with their ayahuasca experience, but they get back and their boss is still a jerk. Their wife is still mad at them. The babies are still crying. The bills have to be paid. And essentially it's fracturing. You know what I mean? Yeah. To go that deep and far, to have no one to explain it to you. And you come back and you're like exactly the same.
As you say, you have to meditate and continue meditation and continue if you do yoga. Or at least journaling, you know, that you can, and have somebody help you, like you helping people to digest this transformation you just experienced. You cannot go back. The medicine wheel now would be an interesting subject because healing, you know, we've learned about your experience, and now you talk about something very, very important in religions. I mean, you have in Christianity, you have the Alpha and the Omega. You have in Taoism, you have the yin and yang, which is encircled by the circle, you know. Then you have in Buddhism only the circle. I mean, you have the wheel of life, you have the, you know, mandalas, whatever. And then in Hinduism, everywhere is this emptiness expressed through the circle. And I don't think that it's very different in these kind of traditions, Native American traditions, because ultimately it's coming from the hub where they lived always in circles, and then the medicine wheel, that would be something interesting. Because right now I just come out of this solo episode I'm making of the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path of the Buddha. And the Eightfold Path is a circle and has the spokes in there. And so I really would like to know, because, you know, if I say this before I hand it over. It's like in Buddhism, the problem the Buddha said after he was like supremely enlightened, and it was a long time ago, of course, and we don't know much about it now anymore, except those oral traditions, those formulas he transmitted, like the Four Noble Truths, which included the Eightfold Path. But the Four Noble Truths, it all starts out like after his enlightenment, he came out and said, you know, the problem with this world is that everything is off center. So there is again this metaphor of a wheel. It's off center. Well, they lived in an agricultural society. There were ox and carts. You know, the ox were pulling the carts, and the carts had wheels. You know, so they said, you know, life is like that wheel. It's off center. It hurts. You know. And then he came to the problem. The problem is it's off center. Is something not right in the axle and the spokes, and it's something out of order. And what do you do? The Eightfold Path, and it's like the medicine wheel. I believe, you know, the Eightfold Path is nothing else but right thinking, right understanding, right vision first. That's right understanding, right thinking, right speech, no gossiping and stuff like this. Right thought, right action, right livelihood, right concentration, right meditation. That's all about this. That you put this medicine wheel, so to speak, again straight, so it doesn't hurt when it turns. Sorry. It was a long.
Oh, no, it's fascinating. No, I love hearing you speak about that. And I, like yourself, I'm interested in the I call it the Vesica Pisces, that overlap between circles where there's that sweet spot, right? Because if you see an overlap between many different cultures, you go, there's some truth in there that goes deeper than just culture, right?
Exactly. That's the first thing. Because, we have this, there is man and women, that's already for some people a separation problem. Then there is this racism. There's some problem that there are people have different colors. Then there is spirituality, religions. There's a problem that there are Jews and there are, Muslims and that there are Christians and Hindus. And then you're coming further, cultural, they are a different country. All of this is nonsense, of course. And it's beautiful. It's just like different flowers. And you say it, when you hear from different traditions, wisdom tradition, when you hear from different, or starting with shamans, coming to priesthood, coming to scriptures, written down and stuff like this. But when you see similarities, this is all nonsense, these divisions. It's not like I have to become comparative religion expert and say, look, this is exactly like Hinduism and Buddhism. They're so similar. It's not the point. The point is that you see that all comes from the same crystal, from the same jewel, the jewel which reflects the whole universe. And basically you are a jewel and everybody's a jewel and the whole thing is a jewel. And it all reflects everything else, ultimately, ad infinitum. And it's all image stuff and similarity, right?
It is. I mean, really, I think a lot of it is about that fractal nature of things.
Yes.
And then you have your circle, of course, which is the basic building block of the universe because of the atom. You get past that and you get into what the atoms build, the carbon molecule, which is the basis of life here in this dimension. So it really makes sense to me once you get into it, going deeper and deeper into the medicine wheel. The carbon molecule is the basis for life, and it has those polarized atoms on it that it make a very rigid square. You get into things where people talk about the tesseract and, the square within the square is a portal. So you go, oh, okay. So, there are 4 elements, there are 4 seasons. We talk about the 4 stages in life. It's just fascinating. 4 states of consciousness, 4 aspects of our consciousness. So if we take the medicine wheel, right? Here in Albuquerque, the sandias, the mountains are really prominent. And of course, sandia means watermelon. So the Spanish got here and they saw these mountains. They said, oh, looks like a piece of watermelon because the sun hits it, it lights up bright pink. And there's a little piece of green on top where the evergreens are. So it really does look like a slice of watermelon. The sun rises in the east by those guys. Sun goes down in the west on the opposite side. So for us, that means east is fire. Now, these things are different all over the planet. I looked at everybody's different medicine wheels and systems. And this one is the one that makes sense to me. My elder asked me to reformulate it so that I'm not, taking anything from his tradition. And it's like our version of a doctoral dissertation. When you've essentially taken all of this information and you process it and you spit out something original, then, you're allowed to be a shaman. So needless to say, it's not like a certificate that you can order in the mail. And a lot of people fail. And I think it should be like that. If you don't have the tenacity and the strength and the mettle to get through these challenges, you don't deserve to be a spiritual leader, honestly. In the old days, they would actually have people go out from the village. And I won't get sidetracked too much from the medicine wheel, but like these things keep on coming up.
No, that is a focus point of our podcast. I really want to know more about it. It's very interesting.
Well, the training process, they would pull people out in the very early stages of life. You can almost see it in some babies' eyes. And then there are some genetic strangenesses about certain lineages, distinguishing characteristics, and a certain light. So they would pull those kids out and they would have them study from an early age. But when they went to prove themselves, they would send them out into the desert, not during rainy season. They would take them into the desert. And if they could make rain, then it would be obvious to everyone. Incredible. The distinguishing characteristic, like for us, is can you intervene when necessary to save the village if it hasn't rained in a while? Because it's pretty common for us to lose crops during a drought. At any rate, if those people weren't able to make rain, they often chose to just stay out there and not come back, because they would feel ashamed. So it was literally do or die. And you think about it that way and you think, wow, that's pretty incredible. But east is fire, south is earth, west is water, and north is air. So when you balance air and earth, then you get a thing in the middle. And when you balance fire and water, you get a thing in the middle. Now, when you take those and you balance all of them together, kind of a bubble of light pops up. And it shifts the nature of your experience in this reality when you're in that bubble effectively. But in order to hold that bubble open and hold space for a ceremony, it takes a lot of juice. It's just like martial artist training. You train and you train and you train, and you get stronger and stronger until you're able to kind of sublimate a little bit and break the laws of the physical universe.
When I think about Taoism, there is this three powers. The Tao Te Ching, the Te means power. The whole thing means the way of the power, and it's the book by Lao Tzu, and it's the origin of Taoism. Legend says it was written in 3 days. Lao Tzu had enough of it. He wanted to leave the country, and he rode off to Tibet on his buffalo, water buffalo. The guard at the border held him back and said, no, we cannot leave. You cannot leave right now. You have so much wisdom, write it down. 3 days, He wrote it down in verses, and it says the way and its power. And now Tao Te Ching. Te, it's not one power, it's three powers. And the first power is the Wu Wei. That is your personal power, where you say the force.
Wu Wei.
Yeah, exactly. And the second one is the power which you get from meditation, from movement, and from hygiene, and all these practices, like almost scientific methodologies. And the third one, and that comes now from the shamans, is the cosmic power. So often, we forget that there are these individuals out there, and they have been out there all the time. They access cosmic power. So what you just said, that's not for everybody, I mean, I'm very good. I'm the king of Wu Wei because, I was 10 years in Central America on the beach. I had my e-commerce store, and when people ask me about my philosophy, I said, Wu Wei Wu, which means everything is accomplished by doing nothing, right? But that's not really the case, because I told them afterwards, the sun goes up, everything is like surfing. In other words, I mean, you don't do anything in the morning and you see the sun going up, that's Wu Wei Wu. And Wu Wei, of course, is something which is a way of life, frictionless way of life. Like water, you're avoiding friction. That's where you get the power, because the people involve themselves in arguments and all kinds of things. That's where I am strong in this sense. But then there is the other thing, meditation stuff. I do it all also. Yoga, that would be all the second power, the Qi in Taoism. And then the last one is this shamanism thing. And that's why I'm so interested in our interview. So one of the questions I want to ask you is, Ayahuasca retreats, because you're very strict with those retreats. As a certified shaman, who is with the lineage of so many other shamans in throughout America, you start, you don't like people who want to just go on a trip. They do yoga or meditation as a preparation, and they're spiritual, and they want to heal. And then you want them do journal, and do more yoga and meditation, because they have to follow up with that kind of new reality they experienced, so they can digest it and they can actually continue their life as a transformed person. So tell me more about the criteria to be admitted to one of your referrals, and when are they, and what is ayahuasca anyway, because not everybody, I think, knows it.
It's becoming more and more common, ayahuasca. But all right, so first things first, what do the retreats look like? Right now, we're running 2 types of retreats. One is the community here in Albuquerque that I've obviously promised to serve. And this is my bone country, so it's important for me to hold one here each month. But we've layered in another level where it's like a VIP retreat, where it's all inclusive. There's a chef that does all of the food. We're doing that one at the Mineral Springs. So, and then once a year, 4 times a year, actually, we'll also have a retreat where we're doing shamanic training. Most of the shamanic training will be done online, but we do have to meet a few times a year. So we've got some nice new retreats coming up. The web platform is also changing from a plain old website to a platform where we can have a container for a global community. Because there are people all over the world who are interested in what we're doing, but they might not be able to come here. It might take 6 months or 2 years before they're able to show up. And in the meantime, we want to support them and connect them. So the retreat here, we start on a Friday night and we do sweat lodge. So traditional sweat lodge. We sing. We have a song for each direction. Everyone gets to make their prayers.
What is that exactly what you just used? Because people cannot see it. I can see it, but...
Oh, I'm sorry. This is a traditional, I think it's a Huichol rattle. It's really beautiful.
It looks like an egg.
It does, which is also, again, back to that divine feminine thing, right? The things that are around. After the sweat lodge, we do Kambo, the frog medicine. Then I send everybody home so they can rest and purge in the comfort of their own space.
You know what, Kambo? I think we have to also define it, because I read it, but I don't know what it is.
Kambo is the secretion of an Amazonian tree frog, Phyllomedusa bicolore. So it's a big tree frog, huge. And I think it's the only frog that swings from trees like a monkey. So sometimes they call it a monkey frog too. But,
we have the word in your biography because that's where it's first mentioned. Interesting. I never heard about it.
Yeah. And so the warriors, before they go on a hunt, and sometimes people in the village as a ritual, apply the frog venom to a burn, puntitas, on the shoulder. I know that the viewers can't see this, but I don't know if you can. There are these tiny little dots right there, puntitas, that are...
Puntitas, dots, yeah.
Yeah, we apply the medicine. You burn the top layer of skin, peel that off, and then you apply the medicine. And it goes in and essentially, I mean, I call it a somatic reset. It goes into your system and just flushes everything out, both physically and energetically. But it goes into the lizard brain and it washes out a lot of pre-verbal trauma. Most people have trauma in early childhood, right?
Like the triune brain theory, you have this 3 types of brains.
Yeah, I mean, there are actually 4. There's the old lizard brain, small mammal, large mammal, and I call this one the dolphin brain, the frontal lobe.
Okay, the dolphin, yeah, because they're very intelligent. Yeah.
Right. Well, and they have that huge frontal lobe that they do their sonar with.
Yes, exactly.
So
mine is still growing with age. I don't know why. Getting a bigger frontal lobe. Maybe.
Because when you meditate, it actually grows it. Did you know that? Yeah, so it can be atrophied. And obviously a lot of modern day people, this would be totally atrophied because they don't meditate and, do the things they need to do. But it can be built. So that's super interesting. It's just growing. It is, huh?
Yes, it is growing. Look. It's growing.
Yeah, as we're speaking, it's pulsating.
Finally, I get a bigger brain. I always thought I had a small one anyway.
So the retreat goes on Saturday. We ask people to be in retreat, like even though they're at their hotel room, don't watch TV, limit your interaction with other human beings and all of that because you're in sacred space. And Saturday night is when we take the ayahuasca. The ayahuasca has 2 components. It has an MAOI, a monoamino oxidase inhibitor, and then it has the DMT component. It turns out that the Egyptians were really crafty, and so were the Greeks, at making their version of ayahuasca. So you need the inhibitor, which is found in the capi vine or ayahuasca vine, and the Europeans would use Syrian rue, which is a really excellent inhibitor. It's actually, I think it's superior to ayahuasca in a lot of ways, physically at least. But
these are actually psychoactive substances that induces alterations in perception, mood, consciousness, cognition, or behavior for the purposes of spiritual development or otherwise, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Entheogen, something that brings us closer to God.
I just read that now from the Wikipedia because it sounded more intelligent than I am. No, but it's true,
That's
That's
really cool.
I knew it's alterations in perception, but the other thing was nice to read.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so essentially, there's the inhibitor part, and then there's the DMT part. DMT is already in our bodies. It just doesn't run in the bloodstream. So what happens is when you have the inhibitor, it allows it to flow through the bloodstream and into the brain, where it gives you that psychedelic experience. I suspect, and from what I've seen with the medicine, I believe it to be true that that's the governor. That's the thing that makes us believe that we're separate from the spirit world, is the lack of DMT flowing in our bodies. So when you have that inhibitor and you have the DMT combined, then whoosh, off you go.
I actually watched a few shows and episodes, documentaries, particularly on Gaia.com about Ayahuasca. And what I learned really is that we have all these chemicals already in our body. They get just stimulated. They are not, they're kind of dormant in our body. We have them. So they get somehow stimulated because everything outside is also inside. Like Rumi, that Persian mystic and poet said, you're not a drop in the ocean, you're the ocean in the drop. And, I feel like it's all in us. It's just stimulating us. And it's just stimulating things we have it already in us. If it's not already in us, it's like seeing a flower. If you cannot experience the beauty of that flower, then the sun shining, without my eyes, the sun cannot shine, in a sense, It's all reciprocal. It's all interconnected. It's all one net of beautiful interdependency, not codependency, but co-originating dependency, interdependency. I don't know what you think about this, but anyway, I see it like very natural. I think if I would take this substance, I would think, it is already in me anyway. I just augment it maybe, or I just stimulate it, but it's in me. It cannot be something totally external. Maybe I'm talking nonsense.
No, I mean, there's this duality. It's like I was saying before, it's not either or, it's this and also. So even though we are separate to some degree, or it appears that we are, we're not. And there is no separation. There's just unity and layers of interconnectedness.
That is the beautiful thing, Courtni, because, the whole thing about enlightenment and awakening is really, and I don't know much about it. Of course, I'm not enlightened. I'm not running around and say I'm enlightened, or I'm sitting here and Joseph Shinwell is enlightened. That would be a crazy person. But I think it is really what it is. It is like to feel disconnected, to feel isolated. That's not a real truth, because in all of the wisdom tradition, you are everything, but you are also nothing. And that nothingness and that everything is one and the same, because you're so interconnected. You could not be here without your parents. You couldn't be here without the trees. You couldn't be here without the water, without the sunshine, without the air. And nevertheless, even though you would be nothing without it, you are actually also everything, right? That's the thing. There's nothing to be afraid of, because nothingness doesn't really exist, because it always comes, like you talk about the duality, it always comes with something. And that is the fantastic thing, what I would like to experience when I have this retreat with you, and I will, as soon as I can. So I would, it's on my bucket list, is that I would like to know more about that whole thing about spirit world. I don't know anything about it. And that whole thing about spirits, I don't know anything about it. I think, if you think about spirits, and I really would like your opinion about it, if you think about spirits like grandmothers and great-grandparents and further back, lineages, what we talk about, or, whole history. Maybe I was a knight before, or maybe a king even, who knows, a miserable king who has been riding from from northern Germany to the Pope, like 3 times in his lifetime, because the Pope wanted to excommunicate him. Anyway, the thing is, where do these people go? Where are we going? That's the question. Can we go anywhere? Because space and time, right? I mean, there's always this eternal now. And these are the things I'm so fascinated talking with you.
It is a super interesting conversation. The ayahuasca experience is really unique because, one way of thinking about it is you have to go down through the layers of the unconscious in order to rise up. And And so I joke with people that, the cover charge is that you have to give up something that you were attached to. If you want to get into the psychedelic cosmic party out there in the universe, you have to give something up and shed something and sacrifice something. And
I see.
sometimes it's painful, our attachments and our limiting beliefs and things, they have to be shed. And it's a never ending process. I've been at this for 20 years, and every single time there's something new that comes up.
That is also beautiful.
Yes.
That there is always something new. I mean, that's what I like in life, the adventure never stops. That's why I want to learn about this medical medicine plants, and but I want to learn it from somebody who knows about it. And I was following you already. You have this great Facebook group. I mean, I have to congratulate you. Over 1,200 people. You're like famous on the internet, and that is in the show notes. The link. It's called Urban Shaman, right? That's you. And your videos are just, the way you explain things, fascinating. It's so integrated, coordinated, and all these beautiful pictures you have there about educational stuff, about shamanism and all this. And then you have a website, and there you get event schedule on Meetup in New Mexico, and that is findingtheforce.com. And that's, of course, also in the show notes. There's a beautiful video there for 3-4 minutes, successful ayahuasca journey. And then you have Finding the Force, which is a magazine, and Claim Your Free Insider Gift, 5 magic tips for true power. It's all there. So, there are also lots of testimonials of people. People they look like they're the CEOs of millionaire companies here. And this is not just, not trippers, right? Not people who just want to go on a trip. These are very established people here. And probably not only, as long as they are interested in spirituality, you take them, I'm sure. Beautiful. I will put this all in the show notes. Let's wrap it up with one thing, How do you see the spirit world? How did you experience it? How do you, when you are after death, when you meet them, are you afraid of them? How do they talk to you? How do they communicate with you? Where are they? Are they?
Where are they?
You don't believe in hell and heaven, so it cannot be so bad, right?
No. Hell is a place that you can only live in your own mind. There's no construct out there. So what happens usually, like I said, is we did the same thing with our shamanic drum journey. We journey through a portal, a sipapu, down into the underworld. And oftentimes there's the experience of there being a river, like the river Styx, that separates the living from the dead. And of course, from the point of view of the spirit world, we're dead and they're alive, just so you know. So that was the first thing.
Wow. I never heard that before, but I believe it,
We have an
that's interesting. That's a very interesting view, because it reminds me on the Buddha, which I study again very in depth. Without being a Buddhist, I'm not going to put an orange robe on me, and I respect them, but I like to stay out of the box. But he said, people who are not mindful, they are already as if they are dead. And how many people are not mindful in this world? We're running around like zombies, polarized.
Programmed.
We don't understand. Yeah, we don't understand that there is a field of reference, that there is a space and time event, which is you and me, and everybody has his own, because I have my own experiences. We are different. And at the same time, we lose this, we think we are this, we represent everything, but we do not. And so that's a very good thing what you just said, they believe that we are dead and they are alive. Fantastic. But how happy are they?
I think how happy are they depends on how they lived their lives, how mindful they were, how kind they were, how much joy they experienced or brought into the world. If people have attachments to things that are painful and negative, and there's people who never have anything good to say. There's a wow, wow, wow about something all the time, the negative people. Well, just like they're like that here in life, they're like that on the other side. So if you do come across something that feels like a hell realm, it would be kind of like a pocket or a cluster of those spirits, or even one at a time, that is trapped in their own, I'm sorry, I call it mental masturbation. Mitote is another word for it that Miguel Ruiz uses, that makes sense, but they're caught in their own story. So in order for them to move out of what I would perceive as a hell-like realm, they would have to actually shed that. Now, the wonderful thing about ayahuasca is that you can do a lot of that work in this life, in this body, which is a much stronger position to be in, because once you don't have a body anymore, you don't have that anchor. And you can really get trapped in some nasty places. But it's usually like the self-deprecation or, that mental chatter that actually becomes real in the spirit world. So I can see where they got hell from. So that's the lower world. That's what would be the unconscious. Then you're moving up in vibration and frequency, and you get to what we call the middle world. And the middle world for us is the place where our ancestors are, and mostly they're just doing the same things they did in life. They're maybe in the cosmic libraries, they're playing instruments, they're dancing, they're farming, they're eating.
Amazing.
Yeah, and now that's where you might find your ancestors.
So are they still following their own religions? Like, are the Christians still praying to Jesus, and the Jews whatever they do, and are the Hindus still like Hindus? Are they in their own communities there?
Yeah, there seem to be places where people have agreements on how they want to experience the spirit world. So say one of those agreements might be, we'd like to be closer to Krishna or Saraswati. Okay, great. So then those people who feel that notion, they're kind of like followers or caretakers of those deities' energies. And they help humans to actually connect to that. So that's an interesting question. I mean, I've never met Jesus in the afterlife. I have a bit of an aversion there because I was raised Christian, and a lot of that was forced on me, and
he's probably very busy anyway, with others.
Right. Somebody's got him. He's good.
But the Hindus, they say this is like infinite vertical tiers. So as we think about infinite horizontal galaxies and multiverses, so also I could believe that, because we according to Hinduism, again, we rise like bubbles, like in the water. We rise like bubbles. We start as jivas, and then we go up, and as we become more enlightened and awakened, we become Brahman. That is the one reality which is already inside us. And there are all kinds of people on their way. But what happens to reincarnation? I mean, if they're still there, they're not reincarnated. I mean, I think about my beloved ones, aunts, and uncles and grandparents, loved ones. I think about them. I don't want them here with me, because I think they should be free. Hopefully, they are again a baby, and a reborn, and they have maybe their constant existence where they always come back to themselves. But life is a cosmic game. It is like we want to play all the time, we want to grow all the time, and I think it's like this is a middle world. This is one kind of world where we are until we got it, until we move on, and there are many other worlds probably. So there's really my mind is like this. I don't want to bother any loved ones, when they die. I feel always, hopefully they have a better life afterwards. But where? I mean, in empty space, in the void. I mean, there are so many galaxies and so many worlds out there, somewhere, but then they will forget who we are, of course. I mean, that's the thing. It will be gone. They will be gone. The Buddha said also clearly, when I'm gone, I'm gone. Don't pray to me. People don't go to this. There are so many, like in Christianity, people, and I don't care about Buddha either. I mean, really, it's not like this is a long time ago, but I'm interested in the old stuff. That's why this podcast. But I can imagine he's gone, completely gone. And people pray to him, and idolize him and idolize him. And he said also clearly, don't make me into a god. I'm not a god. I'm just a human being. So when you go to the origin of this, when they were written and not when they were like, became mythology and idealized, and then you see this kind of statements. And I think it's clear, who doesn't want to be gone? Who wants to hang around after death, go back to the people in the world and go in their living room and sit down next to them, and I'm invisible and feel you. I don't understand this stuff, I'm just maybe not spiritual enough.
I mean, right. So the basic answer.
I'm very ignorant. You see now, I'm very ignorant. I don't know. That's why I need this ayahuasca journey. And you, my guide, because then I learn.
Okay. That'll be fun. We'll have a good time. I think you'll like the community and the people. They're not here to trip. We've found a way to filter out people who want that. Y'all can go on down to South America, have fun. I'm not your guide, because we're building community. We're doing something more than just serving ourselves. We learn how to take care of each other. Oftentimes we do projects together. And there are some powerful people in the world who are younger, who deserve the support that I got when I was younger too. At any rate, as far as the spirits go, I'm gonna hit this one because it's a fascinating thing. And your mind.
I'm quiet. I'm totally quiet now.
Well, your mind works a lot like mine. I have those same questions. Is there a heaven and hell? If so, where are they? Who decides who gets to go where and who doesn't? And reincarnation. How does that work? So my grandmother, the Native American grandmother, was spiritually a really powerful being and just really beautiful and pure-hearted. And I see her oftentimes when I go to the spirit world, or she'll send a message, right? But has she reincarnated? And is it either or? Is it possible that an aspect of us, say that our loved ones would recognize an aspect of us resides in the spirit world? I mean, I think that's how it works, to be honest. The part that's here is only a small fraction of what we really are. And then we also are connected. Like they show me like the branch on a tree, and the little twigs and the little flowers, they're all one at some level. And yet they're all separate, right? They're all part of the same tree and the same essence.
Yes.
They are discrete, but they're fractally discrete, which means they're not really separate entities at all. They're just part of the same template. So if you think about it, maybe what we are is like that tree, and our incarnations are like those little branches and flowers, huh? It doesn't have to be that because there's a branch over here that this branch doesn't exist. It's both and also.
Yeah, and then what makes me, of course, think about this in a positive way is that the time, because there's only the now. So we say, the future and the present is an abstraction of the mind, and it could all be at the same time. So how can somebody be somewhere else? Even the body dies. I mean, in India, it's very clear. The body is just like a clothing stuff, and Hinduism, Buddhism is the same. And I don't know, Taoism doesn't talk much about it. And we in Christianity, we have always a completely different cosmology and mythology. With us, it's always God has made us from clay, and everything is made. The trees are made with wood, and it's a completely different way of thinking. And then we go to heaven or we go to hell. You have to love it because I grew up with this. I still like to go to church sometimes, but not because I'm a religious person, but because it reminds me on a beautiful culture we have. And I respect, people who think that way. But it's kind of, doesn't make sense, the whole thing, when you think about time, because time is surreal. All of the time comes together in the now, and everything else must be always simultaneously happening.
Yeah, and that's the strange thing, is that we have many, many life paths that are possible. And I do believe a lot of them are happening at the same time at once in different realms of the multiverse. Because you go to the spirit world, and again, you're in that timeless space, and things look a lot more like a tapestry, like a fractal tapestry. You see those wheat hole designs that are so intricate and colorful. They're seeing energy. That's an expression of our consciousness, and how, again, same tapestry, but here's a pattern over here, here's a pattern over here. And depending on what you choose in life, you're following the thread of a certain pattern,
Interesting.
But there are many, many patterns.
Yes. Well, patterns, it's in Tibetan Buddhism, it's all a grand cosmic weaving. We all part of this weaving, which is going on. Weaving, did I say it right? A weaving tapestry. A weaving tapestry. It's like everything is interconnected and co-originating. And in Taoism, they say mutually arising. And I think that was a great ending of our podcast, because people, they will have cleaned the whole house, or they will have gone through 30 kilometers on their bicycle listening to us. No, really, Courtni, it was fantastic, really. We will stay in contact. We will talk again, I'm sure. But I make 2 episodes out of it, and this is the second one, of course. And I think we wrap it up. What do you think?
Yeah. The only thing left that I might say is that this concept of the divine feminine. And
that would be beautiful, yeah. Definitely, yeah.
Because I've come to believe that the divine feminine matrix, the Egyptians represented her as Nut, as the night sky, and she's this winged creature with the stars all over her. And it's interesting because you get out there, or in here, into the innerverse, and out into the cosmos, and you go, wow, there's so much empty space. And all of that 99.9% that they used to think was empty space is actually cosmic consciousness. Now, the really interesting part is, how does one thing manifest and another doesn't? Or if our soul is like that tree, how do we end up on one single tapestry thread when there are millions of them? So it's the consciousness piece that really interests me. And that is definitely assigned to the divine feminine. And ayahuasca, I have an experience of ayahuasca as a female, as an auntie. She'll often come as an older native woman with white hair.
You call her grandmother ayahuasca?
Yeah. Somebody tried to convince me the other day that they made that up for tourists. And I'm like, well, they didn't make it up for tourists in my head, right? Like, my experience has been that this is a very female type of energy. And I'm open to the possibility that it's different for everyone. There's no final answer. But yeah, she's a companion with cosmic consciousness. And the first thing you start to see is your inner world and your inner terrain, and it's lovely. It's a wonderful experience.
Yeah, I have that feeling also. A grandmother has such a sacred, the ideal grandmother, such a sacred, aspect to it. And, I see it clearly in Taoism, where the origin, the first verse of the Tao, the Te Ching, clearly says, and the mother, this becomes the mother out of nothingness, right? And then it becomes the mother of all things. It says the mother of all things, And you have it also in Hinduism with the spouse of Shiva. And Joseph Campbell, again, he talks a lot about the goddess, mother goddess. And it is clear, men and women, they come from the mother goddess. And the mother goddess is the mystery of mysteries. And it's something she even, even the gods in India, Indra god and all this fire god and whatever, they are scared and they are nothing without the goddess, So yeah, I clearly understand that, and I have this archetype of a sacred grandmother in me also. Like, we have also this angry god, this our culture, this angry god. I don't know where he comes from, like from the sky, and
where does he
yeah,
come?
it's like this is an archetype, right? Anyway, you know what? That was great, that you explained it also, because it's something also which was on my mind. Yeah, I think hopefully it was very interesting to everybody, and some people will have left us before, but it will be also in the show note, everything, and some people will listen to it twice, maybe. Who knows? I love my listeners, and I know some of them, of course, because personally, I'm going to, if you agree, Hale, Courtni, then I'm going to wrap it up.
Excellent.
I thank you, first of all, very much, Courtni, for having been on the show. It was a real pleasure and learning experience for me and for our audience, for my audience. I thank you, my audience, for listening in. The recap of the show with bullet points is in the show notes with all the links mentioned during the interview on onbythebeach.com. If you like this podcast, please subscribe to have you here again for our next episode. This is Joseph Schinwald, your host, and Courtni, thank you, goodbye.
Thank you, and bye for now.
Thank you all, and goodbye until we meet again.